Hi everyone, Family Namir here. Today I'm going to show you my super basic pizza crust recipe. This pizza crust has been on my website for a couple months now and has gotten good reviews, so I thought I would make a recipe video to show you how to do this and show you that you no longer need to buy pre-made crust in the grocery aisle. Now, I have changed this recipe just a little bit. I'm using spelt and wheat instead of whole wheat. But you can definitely use all wheat. And if you are using white flour, this recipe will not work unless you scale back the amount of water. So for starters, sorry about the bad lighting. I really couldn't get the camera any other way. But to this bowl, we're going to add 1 cup of spelt flour. If you don't have spelt flour, you can use any other glutinous flour other than wheat if you want. Rye is a good option, so is barley, and things like that. Or if you don't have or you just don't want to use, feel free to use all whole wheat. It's important to note that this is not white flour or bleached flour or enriched flour. This is just whole grain ground into flour. And if it matters to you, I'm using a 50-50 mix of red and white wheat. 1 full tablespoon, yes, tablespoon of yeast. This gives it a really good flavor and makes it taste like something you would get from a really good pizzeria. 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. This is a thick brown sugar, which means there's actually less in a tablespoon than finely ground, so you may need a little less depending on your taste. I like brown sugar because it gives it a little special flavor, but regular sugar will work fine. And here in this little container, I have 3/4 of a cup of warm water. It's not really hot. You don't want really hot water or you will kill some of the yeast. This is 106 degrees Fahrenheit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the lid on, okay, put this in for starters, and pulse a few times just to mix the flour and the yeast together. Okay, now I'm going to take off my insert, and with the food processor running, add this in a little bit at a time. The trick is to get the perfect balance that it just starts to come together, but is not super hard or super soft. I wanted to show you this. Do you see how when we got the perfect amount of water, it came together really nicely like this? It's not tacky, and it'll hold an indent. That's perfect. Now, here's the beauty of the food processor. We're going to let this go for about 2 minutes to help develop gluten. You can do this by hand if you want, but it'll take 5 to 10 minutes. If your food processor does too good of a job of blending it, which mine has a tendency to do, just scrape the sides and pull it up. So after 2 minutes of processing, this is what I have. Don't worry about the consistency so much at this point if it's just a slight bit wet. So scrape off the flour and the dough from your blade and ball it together with your hand. See how it's nice and soft? Slightly tacky, but really nice soft dough. Now you can see that I've scraped my bowl pretty well, and here's my dough. Now this will make enough for a regular sized large pizza, or 2 to 3 smaller mini sized pizzas as I usually do. Now, your tackiness, you'll notice, is starting to disappear. It'll leave a hole, it'll stay indented, and now what I do, just to make this easier on myself, I put it back in after I've balled it up and set this on here in place. Note that the S blade is no longer in there, and I will let this rise covered for 1 to 2 hours, depending on how long I take before I want to make my dinner. However, if you don't feel comfortable rising it in plastic, which I understand, put it in a glass bowl with a wet cloth and stick it in your oven with the light on, and that'll help with the rising process. So it ended up being about 2 hours that I let my dough rise, and it only needed about an hour before it had doubled in size, although I didn't need to cook it until now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set my oven for 425. If you're using a pizza stone like I am, you're going to want to make sure that you put the pizza stone in your oven like it is here. Middle rack, just like that, in the center. if you're not using something like a pizza stone, you can use a pizza pan, and this would be fine also. You don't need to preheat this. And here I have another grain. Again, you can use just wheat flour. I am using a little bit of ground barley to give me a non-stick surface. This just adds more nutrition to it, plus I need to use it up. And here's our dough. It went from being up here to being here, so it has doubled in size. I'm going to scrape the bowl. Earlier, it was a little sticky, okay? And we're gonna have to use some flour to help with the stickiness. I've just got some wheat flour here to help me do this. Some flour on and your rolling pin. And this shouldn't take much pressure because all the yeast that we put in there makes this dough extremely soft. I am going for a thinner crust pizza that is no larger than the size of my cutting board because I know that this will fit on my pizza stone. For a non-stick surface, what I like to do is I take some organic cornmeal. This is very finely ground cornmeal, and I rub it into what will be the bottom of my pizza. If you're gonna have too much, that's okay. Now, because I'm using a pizza stone and I don't have one of those special tools to flip the pizza, what I have to do is I have to get this onto this board and then decorate it, which is easier said than done. Okay, so once you get it onto the final size sheet, I just reshape it like this. Now, you don't need to pre-bake this crust, which is great. Although, what I like to do is I like to take a fork and just every little bit poke at it. If you don't want your crust to remain a little thinner, you don't have to do this step. And then that is it. Okay, so that's the basic recipe for a pizza crust and how to form a pizza. I'm cutting this video off here. However, I will be doing a video on how I assemble the pizza and how I bake it and all of that. And just kind of like how to make a decent vegan pizza and what I use to make it. Not really a recipe. But if you want to see that, check my channel or click the link on my website to go to that video. For the written recipe and tutorial, please visit my website, www.baileynamir.com. Bye!